Hello, and welcome to this introduction to Empowered Seashell Healing. My name is Zabi Barnes, and I am a seashell shaman and seashell healing teacher. I have shared my seashell healing method with thousands of people in 24 countries and counting. In this webinar, I'm going to teach you specific ways of working with seashells for self-healing, personal growth, and for facilitating healing for others. I'm also going to share with you my advanced energetic way of working with seashell spirals so that you may receive the full benefit of their healing power. Most people working with seashells for healing are barely scratching the surface of the spiral energy that is available to them. In this webinar, I'm going to tell you how you can go much deeper. Seashells are crystals from the sea, and like crystals, each one carries its own particular and specific type of healing energy. Seashells come from the depths of the ocean and are made of the salt of the earth. They can connect us with the deepest part of ourselves and the deepest parts of our soul. Their spirals spring from the very beginning of our human origins and can be used to shift and evolve the light codes of our spiraling DNA. We can use activated seashell spirals to initiate alignment with the healing power that each of us embodies. So, in my work with seashells, we're working with the energy of the spirals, not with the consciousness of the animals that created those seashells. I have a friend who teaches seashell divination, and what she's doing is tapping into the consciousness of the animals. She's cataloged what the animal's behavior is and how that relates to consciousness. That is not what I'm doing with my work. I'm going back to the original spirals that existed before those animals ever even evolved. We're working with the energies of the spirals, not with the power animals that created those spirals. So I want you to remember that everything is made of energy. You are made of energy, and that energy travels in waves. And if you look at the waves on paper, they look like up and down waves, sort of like the waves of the ocean a little bit. But really, when you bring that flat piece of paper out into three-dimensional reality, what we're really talking about is spirals. The waves, that up and down, is actually a spiraling around. Our energies move in spirals, and spirals actually represent the movement of creation. Everything is always moving in spirals, and we know this when we look at nature because we see how plants are organized in spirals. We see how galaxies are organized in spirals. Spirals exist everywhere. As part of my shamanic training, I recently completed a 10-year in-depth apprenticeship with a Mayan elder who was the holder of a Mayan healing lineage. And one of the things that the Mayans teach is that time actually moves in a spiral, that as we evolve in consciousness, our straight timeline of past and future turns into spiral shape, and that we keep moving around and around and around, but up at a new level, we keep coming back around to the same lesson, but at a whole new level. And so again, this is demonstrating that the spiral is how we move through life, that we actually live our life in a spiral. And if it doesn't seem to you like that right now, if it doesn't seem that you're living your life in a spiral right now, that's probably because your spirals got all tangled up with each other. This is something that can happen very easily when we are out of alignment in any way. But the good news is that we can change our energy spirals. And as we change our spirals, we change our lives. And seashell spirals help us untangle and unkink and smooth out our ever-moving energy waves so that we may move through life with grace and with ease. And I believe that this is why almost everyone is so drawn to seashells. It's almost universal that when a person sees a seashell, they have to pick it up. They have to hold it to their ear. Even as adults, it's really hard to walk by one without wanting to play with it. And I think this is because at some level we recognize that they have a power that can help us smooth out our spirals, help us move through life more easily. Ultimately, they can bring healing. And I want to clarify that whenever I say the word healing, I mean change. Whenever we ask for healing, we're asking for something to change. I don't believe that anyone is broken. You're not broken. You don't need to be fixed. But you may be choosing to change some things in your life, and that's what I always mean when I say healing. And ultimately, the word healing means to make whole. That's what, if you look in the dictionary, you'll see that healing means to make whole. So the seashells can help us become more whole, and they do it by smoothing out our energy spiral waves. Always have a choice in every moment of your life. You can choose to spiral up, or you can choose to spiral down. And let's talk a little bit about what each of those looks like. So when you're spiraling up in your life, you're being really positive. When you're spiraling down, you're being much more negative. And so what the negative spiral, the downward spiral looks like is, let's say that you make a mistake. So that happens, right? That's part of life. We make mistakes. In the downward spiral, you then beat yourself up for having made the mistake. Oh, Zabi, you're so stupid. How could you do that? Don't you know better? What's wrong with you? You do that all the time. So now you're pulling yourself down and down and down and down. And I want you to know that I was the queen of the downward spiral. And I came from a family who were masters of the downward spiral. And so the seashells, working with the seashells has really changed that for me. And it can change that for you. Whatever you're spiraling down about, whether it's something to do with your physical existence, your health, your finances, whether it's more about how you handle your emotions, or whether it's a thought pattern that keeps repeating. If you're the type that keeps going into the negative thought pattern, that's a downward spiral. Or it even could be more spiritual in nature. For example, when you're going through a dark night of the soul in your spiritual awakening, that is a huge downward spiral. And any of those things, the seashell spirals can help reverse the course of that spiral and get you spiraling up instead. So let's talk about, what does the upward spiral look like? Well, the upward spiral is, for example, you make a mistake and then you say, oh, well, that didn't work so well. I wonder what I could do differently next time. I wonder how I could do it better. What did I learn from that mistake? Okay, well, I learned this. So now I can apply it in such a way that it will be better next time. And you've now taken your spiral into an upward movement that uplifts you, that supports you, that allows you to grow and expand. And this is what we're ultimately here to do. So here is the polarity. We live in a world, on a planet, in a universe where entropy occurs. And entropy is the tearing apart, the decay, the deterioration. And yet, what we're really here to learn is how to spiral up through that. How to spring up. Think of a spiral spring, that if we go down just a little bit, we can spring up and actually go higher. And if this is something you want to do, the seashells, working with the power of the seashells, is a great way to get you into that spiral momentum that allows you to spring up. instead of falling into that downward spiral that is not helpful or productive. So up until now, we've been talking about spirals in general, but as I mentioned in the beginning, each seashell spiral carries its own particular and specific healing vibration. So just like in crystal healing, where you would use an amethyst to heal one thing and maybe a green tourmaline to heal something else, the same is true for seashells. Each one has its own vibrational frequency. It has to do with the different types of spirals. So some spirals are broad and sweeping. Other spirals are sharp and pointy. Some spirals kind of twist off to the side. And each one brings through a very different healing energy. So I have cataloged over 200 seashell spirals, all of which I have tested on my willing guinea pigs and have proven that they bring through the particular healing energy that has been ascribed to them. I started out with just 11 seashell spirals, and it quickly grew. They started coming to me and telling me what they did, what they were for, and then each one I tried out again and again until I was confident that I had the right energy for each shell. So I'm going to share a few of these with you right now, and I'm choosing some examples that are pretty common that you have seen before, that you may even have one. These are ones that people buy to decorate their homes with a lot of times. So the first one we're going to start with is the abalone shell. This one is used in many shamanic rituals. People often burn sage in an abalone shell. So it's really interesting when you know what the abalone shell actually does, because it brings permission into the healing process. It actually gives permission to heal. And here is a picture of an abalone shell. Now, there are many different types of abalone shell, so I have chosen one to show you today. This is a smaller one. But it gives permission for the healing to occur, which is very, very important in any healing process. Anything that you want to change in your life, anything that you want to become whole with. The abalone spiral unlocks the possibility, and it gives permission for the body to heal, for the aura to heal as well. So think about those shamans that put sage in an abalone shell and then burn the sage as a way to smudge or clear the aura. Well, the abalone spiral is giving permission for that sage to actually work, to take effect, to work. So whether the shamans knew this or not, this is what that spiral does. And if you happen to have an abalone shell, and it may look different than the one I'm showing you here, you might have like the dark green one with the darker colored inside, the rainbow inside. But if you happen to have one, go get it right now. Pause this recording and go get it, and we can play with it. So without sage in your abalone shell, you can place it face down on your body, anywhere that you're guided. So maybe you have an ache or pain somewhere. You can take that abalone spiral and place it on your body. And there's two ways that you can place it. So usually I place the shells face down, but I'm going to encourage you to experiment and see which way you sense the energy most strongly. So usually I put it with the top of the shell facing up and the opening of the shell touching against my body. And every now and then I'll flip them over to see if it's stronger to have it the other way. Go with what is strongest for you. And if you're not sure what's strongest, then go with what you like the best. You don't have to have an understanding of why you like it better one way than another. Always follow what you like the best. And this also includes which direction it faces. So you might twist it around a little bit and try it facing different directions until you find that sweet spot where you like the way the energy works with you the best. And of course you can do this with any shell that you have. The spiral shells. I'm not talking about the clam shells, what they call the bivalve shells. We're only working here with the univalve shells in this particular system because we're working with the spirals. So we're working with any seashell that has a spiral. So if you have any type of seashell with a spiral, you can get it right now and play with placing it on your body, even if you don't know yet what that spiral does. Notice and see if you can sense an energy with it. And if you have more than one type of shell, maybe you have two different types of spiral shells, you can try using each one of them and see if there's a difference in energy. See if you notice any kind of difference whatsoever besides the way they look. Notice, what is it doing with your body as it interacts with your body? And I want you to get that this is just the tip of the iceberg. So keep listening because we're going to get to the point where I tell you how to go much deeper in working with the spirals. Placing them on your body, just finding a shell on the beach and placing it on your body, or buying a shell at a store and placing it on your body, that is the very, very beginning way of working with the shells. There's a much more advanced way that goes far deeper, and we're going to get to that in a few minutes. But for right now, I'm showing you a few different examples, and if you don't have any shells, that's okay because you don't need to have them. I'm showing you some pictures. So if you just have the picture, focus on the picture that's on the screen right now and notice what happens as you look at the shell. What happens as you imagine it on your body? And is there a healing of some kind that comes through? The next spiral that we're going to work with is the nautilus shell, which most people are familiar with. This one is a little bit different than the other spirals that I work with because it goes perfectly around itself. It is the Fibonacci spiral. I meet a lot of people who think that all of the seashells are related to the Fibonacci spiral, and that's not true. Only the nautilus shell and a couple of others are related to the Fibonacci spiral, which goes perfectly around itself. The other spiral seashells go up and around in 3 dimensions. They go up and around, or down and around, depending on which way you're facing it. And they work with logarithms, yes. So all of the seashell spirals are working with logarithms, but they're different logarithms. So only the nautilus and the ammonite fossil are working with the Fibonacci spiral, which some people also identify as the golden mean spiral. There's a slight difference, and if you want to know more about that difference, you can read about it in Drumvalo Melchizedek's books, The Ancient Secret of the Flower of Life, Part 1 and Part 2. Actually, Part 1. But getting back to the nautilus shell, this is the spiral for letting go. So when you find yourself really attached to something in a way that is draining you, the nautilus spiral can help you let go. Some people might call this cutting cords. You're letting go of the attachment that no longer serves you, whether it's an attachment to a person, a place, a thing, an activity, an addiction. The nautilus spiral can help with this. So right now, as you look at the picture of the nautilus spiral, you can imagine that you're holding it on your body, and you might hold it with the opening towards your body, or you might decide to hold it with the opening facing away from you. And you might have a preference of which way you face it and where you place it on your body. So this is all about experimenting in the beginning. Experimenting with the shell. And remember, what comes through the actual shell is just the very beginning of working with seashell spirals. but they're powerful, so you may well get a significant benefit just from working with the shell itself. All right, very good. So another shell that is pretty common in North America, at least, is the lightning whelk. And I want to show you the lightning whelk because this one's a little different from most of the other seashells that you will see. If you notice, the opening is on the left-hand side. So most seashells open on the right-hand side. That's if you're facing the point toward the top. The opening would be on the right. But notice with this lightning whelk, the opening is on the left. The spiral actually spins in the opposite direction. So if you remember from the movie The Karate Kid, wax on and wax off, as you're moving your hand in that spiral, that movement from martial arts, it's a different action, whether you're going clockwise or whether you're going counterclockwise. There are different reasons why you would want to go one way or the other. Well, so the lightning whelk goes in that counterclockwise direction, which is used for clearing. So this is the spiral that we use for physical clearing. Physical clearing. Now, the work I do with the lightning whelk is much more advanced and much more energetic. And with that energetic component, I've had some amazing results working with the lightning whelk shell. I have one that I had activated and I sent it to somebody who had cancer, and she put the shell on over her tumor. She had breast cancer, and she placed the shell over the tumor, and she would lay with it like that every day for a week. She did this, and the tumor went away. Last summer, I had an issue with my dog where she had an allergic reaction to her vaccinations, and so the vet had said to give her Benadryl, and I gave her some, but she was still having hives. And it was after hours, and she's a pug, and pugs have trouble breathing anyway, so there was a danger that she was her throat would close up and she wouldn't be able to breathe, and the Benadryl wasn't working, and I grabbed my lightning whelk shell and I put it on her body, and I sat with her with the shell on her body, and within 5 minutes those hives went away and she was able to breathe normally again. And I kept her with that shell. I slept with her that night with that shell on her all night long to help pull out any poison from that vaccine that was causing the reaction. And so that was pretty dramatic that it happened in 5 minutes. Now, my shells have been energetically activated, and I'm going to talk more about that. So I'm not sure how much of a benefit you'll have from working with just the lightning whelk shell without the energy activation to go with it. But it's worth a try. It's always worth a try, and certainly it will do something. It will do something. It might not be as dramatic as healing a cancer tumor, and of course I'm not ever recommending using seashells instead of seeking medical advice and following what your doctor tells you to do, because it's not my job to tell you to do that. That would be outside of my scope of practice. But certainly it could help. And this is the shell that I use whenever I have like a little sore throat or an ear infection or anything like that, any kind of infection on the body. I place my lightning whelk on the spot that's bothering me, and it clears it up really, really quickly. That's been my experience, and that's also the experience that my students are having with it. So right now, I want you to think about, is there anything in your physical body that you want to clear? Maybe there's an excess of something. Maybe there's inflammation. Maybe there's a little infection somewhere or some swelling somewhere. And as you look at this picture, imagine that you have that shell over that spot and play around with which way is it going to face? Where is the point going to go? And notice if you sense energy moving, Any type of energy moving. If you notice any change, a change in temperature, tingling, pressure, maybe you see things shifting in the aura. Or maybe you hear the harmonic resonance of the spiral working on you from within. Or maybe you just know that something is happening. You don't know why you know, but you just know. Very, very good. All right, so the last shell that I want to share with you is the true tulip shell. And I want to share this one with you to show you the power of working with seashells to clear emotional energies. Because remember, seashells come from the sea, and the emotions are associated with the element of water and the rise and fall of the waves. We have the rise and fall of our emotions. Sometimes our emotions are intense. Sometimes they're calm, like a smooth sea. And the seashell spirals are great at working with emotional energies. So this is the seashell spiral for forgiveness. Forgiveness, which is so important in any healing process, to forgive. My favorite definition of forgiveness comes from A Course in Miracles, which says that forgiveness is to set free of judgment. It's not that we're letting somebody off the hook for bad behavior. We're freeing ourselves of the judgment that is like this big heavy weight that we've been carrying around. And it really affects the emotions. And so with this seashell spiral, we can easily forgive that thing that we had been hanging on to and allowing it to be this big burden in our lives. And I use this spiral whenever I have an argument with my boyfriend so that I can just quickly go into that energy of forgiveness. This spiral has helped people forgive huge things in their lives. I had one student who felt responsible for the death of a family member, and it was eating him up inside. And I gave him my spiral, my seashell that I use for forgiveness. I gave it to him, and he slept with it every night, and he was able to forgive himself. So this is a really huge energy. And so right now, you may not have one of these shells at your house, but you can look at the picture. There's a power in the picture. And imagine that you had that shell in your hand, and imagine that you've placed it on your body, and it's pointing in the direction that you most like, and you have the opening facing the way that feels the best for you, that you like the best. And ask to forgive that thing that you've been hanging on to all this time. Whether it's forgiving yourself, or whether it's forgiving somebody else, or forgiving something in the world, or even forgiving God, which is a really big one for some people. Very good. So now I want to tell you a little bit about the images that you've been looking at. These are cards from my Seashell Healing decks. I've created 3 Seashell Healing decks that contain photos of my activated shells. So what does that mean, that my shells have been activated? It means that the spirals have been expanded. They have been expanded to go deeper into the microcosm, which would take it through the DNA, and they've been expanded outward to take them way bigger than what they really are, to stretch them out through your consciousness, to allow for expanding awareness. I learned how to do this during a 3-day out-of-body experience that happened spontaneously when I was praying during a very dark time in my life. And for 3 days, I say that I was out of my body, but really I was stretched beyond the veil of normal daily existence, taken to see what was on the other side of that veil, to see the golden spiraling light, all of the different spirals of light, and how they affect us and how knowledge travels through these different spirals. And as a result of those 3 days, my own fibromyalgia was healed, and so was the deep depression that I had been struggling with for so long. So I got a real healing from the spirals, and this was without having any seashells in my hands, no seashells anywhere around me. So what I know is that we can tap into the spirals without having the shells, and that people can be activated into this spiral dance, into the dance of each specific spiral, so that the healing can be magnified exponentially. And this is the biggest part of my work, which is why I call it empowered seashell healing, because it's not just about picking up the shell from the beach and putting it on your body. Yes, you can do that, and that's a beginning, but there is so much more spiral energy available to you. So my students for several years asked me to create a deck of cards with the pictures of my seashells, and it actually turned into 3 different decks, one for healing, one for co-creation, and one for spiritual empowerment. And the reason that they wanted pictures of my shells is because they knew that my shells had been activated. They had had experiences with my shells where they would look at them and the shells would start to move on the table and the shells would start to glow. This light would emanate out of them, and they could hear the sound so much louder of the harmonic resonance, because I had done this process with my shells that stretched the spirals through the DNA and out through the spiraling of the cosmos. And they could experience that. And they said that there was something different about my shells and the shells that they had at home, or the shells that they found on a beach, that mine were so much stronger. And so they had the idea that if I would photograph them and put them into a deck of cards, that I could get those energies into the cards and everybody could access them. And they also knew that a big part of my training with my Mayan teacher was about how to put healing energy into objects and how to put it into recordings and how to put it into writing in the spaces in between the words. And so they knew that I would be able to transfer that energy that was in my shells into a tool that everybody could access and use and get the healing from. And so this is what I did. And it started out with 1 deck, and it eventually turned into 3 decks. So the healing deck contains over 60 energies, 60 seashell spirals that are healing energies, energies that always support the healing process. The co-creation deck contains more than 60 seashells that help us create and co-create with others, that get us into action, that get us going with our creativity and putting things into form and manifesting things on the physical material plane. So this co-creation deck is the deck for people who are wanting to manifest something. And then the 3rd deck is the Soul Empowerment deck. And these are the higher spiritual energies, more than 60 seashell spirals that awaken those higher spiritual energies within you. And ultimately, the 3 decks work really well together. So I like to choose a card from each deck and let the 3 different spirals weave together in a beautiful spiral dance. So I created these seashell healing, co-creation, and soul empowerment decks as handouts, as the tools that supported the seashell healing teachings. And in addition to that, I give activations. I actually activate students' hands so that the spirals are awakened even more, like 100 or 1,000 times more powerfully when they receive these spiral activations in their hands. There's a master spiral for each of the 3 decks, and I give the spiral activation for each of those master spirals. And when you work with those spiral activations through your hands, through the activated cards, it's a very, very deep healing, a very, very deep transformation that occurs. And these activations that I give in your hands, they can be done at a distance. So that's how I've gotten my work in so many different countries, is that I meet with people by Skype, I meet with people online, or sometimes by phone, and give them the activations, and their bodies actually start to move as they get brought into this spiral dance of creation. Many times they begin to spiral around as we're working, and they feel themselves being pulled into these giant spirals, almost like a vortex. It is a vortex. It is a specific type of vortex depending on which activation they are receiving. And I just have to say what an honor it is to share this work with people. It blows my mind so many times. It blows my mind, the stories that I'm hearing back from my students who are working with the decks and with the activations. I just recently had a student contact me when we did her activations. She mentioned that she wanted to heal skin cancer, that she had had recurring skin cancer. She had just had a spot removed by the doctor, and she wanted to turn off skin cancer in her body. And so I told her some cards that I thought would be good for her to work with, and she worked with them for a week, and she called me and she said, "My age spots are gone." She showed me her hands were now clear, where she used to have all of these age spots all over them, dark spots on her hands. They were completely gone. And so that even blew my mind, because I had never thought of using the cards to get rid of age spots before. But that's what I love about sharing this work with people, is that they get to bring their creativity into the process as well. And so everybody's coming up with these different combinations of the cards and how to work with them and where to place them. And I'm hearing miraculous results. When I first had my very first deck, one of my students got a little too excited with it, and she laid 7 cards on her client. She had a client lying on a massage table, and she put 7 cards face down, one over each of the woman's chakras, and the woman jolted. It was as if she had been shocked by a huge electric current that ran through her body, and she popped up off the table, and she said, "These cards are more powerful than you know." And pretty much from then on, I advise people not to use 7 cards at once, at least not to start with that many, to start with 1 or 2 or 3 and grow into using 7 at a time, because clearly that was so powerful that it was almost too powerful. But that is what is in the cards. That's the energy that is in the cards. And it's fast. It's really, really fast. So the cards are part of the class. They are the handout for the class. And this is a recorded online training that you receive all of the recordings, and they teach you more in depth about working with the spirals of seashells, about going into the spiral dance of creation. You receive guided meditations, guided activations, as well as booklets that tell about the energy of each of the spirals. It gives you the name of the shell, and it gives you a little paragraph about what each spiral is used for. Sometimes they're used for very concrete physical purposes, and sometimes it's much more of an esoteric energy, more of a spiritual energy that they're used for. And so I teach you how to work with each shell in these booklets, in these recordings. And then once you've listened to all the recordings, you receive a private session with me at a distance, by phone, by Skype, by Zoom, and I activate your hands even more deeply to the master 3 spirals, the spirals that go with each of the decks. These spirals have changed my life. These spirals have changed the lives of my students. They have helped people lift out of depression. They have helped people shift physical conditions. They have helped people change the way they run their energies in their life so that they can accomplish their goals much more quickly and much more easily. And they help people know the power that is always available to them, that they are not alone. This training also involves working in a very profound way with angels, with ascended masters, with Holy Spirit, so that you're not ever doing the healing by yourself, but you are taught to tap into a team of helpers. So again, this is another reason why it is called Empowered Seashell Healing, because I teach you how to bring these light beings, these higher vibrational beings, into the spiral dance so that they dance through the spirals and they again expand the healing that is possible. They amplify it. They bring it to exponential levels. This is why it's so much more than picking up a shell off the beach and just putting that shell on your body. Again, if you choose to do seashell healing that way, you will get a benefit. But what I'm inviting you to do is to unlock the depth of the spiral energy that is available to you. And I have found a very quick, a very easy way to do this. And also, it's a fun way. It's fun to practice, and it's something that you can do anywhere, anytime, just by using your hands. First by using the cards, and then by just using your hands. Because I believe that we're so much more than what is available at the physical level. And originally I tapped into these spirals without the actual shells available to me. And so I want to take you to that level where you are the healing. You are the seashell healing. You don't have to depend on the seashells because you are that healing. This is what this work is all about. In the recorded class, I also teach about how we healed with seashells in Atlantis and in Lemuria. In my years of developing this work, I consulted with spiritual teachers and healers who I looked up to, and also people who were very intuitive, who could tell me more about the work that I was doing, who could give me confirmation or who could tap into things that I hadn't yet realized about the work. And again, what I was told was that I was tapping back into how we healed in Atlantis and Lemuria. And as I asked to remember, I started to get clear on what that was. And so you will get, as part of this training, information about how we worked with seashells in Atlantis and in Lemuria, bringing that healing forward into modern times. So if you have a connection with Atlantis, if you have a connection with Lemuria, this work will help you connect with that awakening, opening you up to being able to remember, being able to awaken that particular healing ability. So if this is something that you would like to learn, if you would like to go deeper and play with seashells in an empowered way, heal with seashells in an empowered way, I invite you to click the link that is included in your email that had this video and It will give you all of the details of what you get in the training. It will give you all of the details of the extra bonus with the Atlantean and Lemuria healing energies. The decks are not available by themselves. I only offer them with the training and with the activations because I want to teach you how to go as deep as possible. It's time to stop playing small. It's time to say yes to expansion. It's time to say yes to going deep. And that's what this work is all about. It's about spiraling up. It's about spiraling deep. It's about spiraling wide so that you can hold more than you ever imagined possible. So I invite you to say yes to these spirals that are calling you right now. So pay attention to emails from me because I'll be sending out twice a month a spiral, a seashell spiral. I'll tell you what the shell is. I'll tell you what it does. You'll get a picture of it. And for those of you who are ready to get on the fast track with your seashell healing, click the link below and you can get all 3 decks. You can get the teachings that go with them. You can get the 3 booklets that tell about the different shells. And you will also receive the private session with me where you get the 3 activations for the master shells of the decks, as well as information about how we healed with seashells in Atlantis and in Lemuria. Remember that sometimes spirals serve as springs that can catapult you up, catapult you deep, catapult you in ways that you never imagined. And the first step is signing up for this proven self-healing system that also you can do on others. You can create a whole practice. You can create a whole healing practice just with this work. I have people who have done that. And it also, remember, works very well with other modalities. Makes everything you do that much easier. Remember that healing is change, that energy follows a spiral wave, and that as we change our spirals, we change our lives.